Hey guys, Dan here. In this video, I'm going to be going over a few recent games by one of my favorite indie horror developers on itch.io. His name is Niven Hedinger, and his studio is called Apish Box Games. He's been around for a few years now, and if you study his itch.io homepage and play his rather extensive library of games, you'll see how far he's come in the last year or so. I've made several playthroughs showcasing his stuff, but this time I wanted to dive deeper and offer some reviews and just give my thoughts on his most recent efforts. So yeah, without further ado, let's get started. First up, we have Crimson Hunt, released in October of 2023. This is a black and white medieval horror adventure where we play as Matthew, a lowly villager who finds himself in sad straits. It seems a mysterious plague has swept the countryside and many have fallen ill and even perished from this awful scourge. His daughter has already succumbed to the illness, and still grieving her passing, he now faces the imminent demise of his dear wife. So yeah, he's not having a good time. Soon our objective is to travel to the nearby town and look for some kind of medicine or remedy. But that's only the beginning. Once there, we discover a cure does indeed exist, but the journey to find it will be fraught with danger. Eventually, we'll face a terrible and monstrous foe. There is some actual combat in the game. Matthew is armed with a crossbow, which I thought was really cool and different. And ultimately, the narrative reaches its conclusion with a satisfying ending. I mean, it's a fully fleshed out story. There's even a little bit of intrigue regarding a town elder and the cause of the plague. The black and white color scheme really lends itself to the old school vibe the developer is going for, although at times it makes the environment somewhat hard to read. It can be difficult to navigate the path you're meant to take. But still, I gotta hand it to any developer who is willing to go the black and white route because it's just so rarely done. I mean, most developers and gamers tend to prefer bright, flashy colors. And hey, I'm one of them, but I still appreciate a classic black and white look. As for other criticisms, I noticed it was pretty easy to get stuck on geometry in the environment. Like, you can get snagged on corners if you're not careful, or even no clip out of the map. The combat mechanic was cool, if a bit awkward at times. You can reload arrows a little too quickly, and basically rapid fire the crossbow like an SMG or something if you wanted. I'm sure that's not what was intended because it makes the enemy encounters ridiculously stress-free. Also, some of the old English-style dialogue is a little stilted and head-scratching, but that's not to say I didn't enjoy the game, because I did. It's such a departure from what most other developers tend to do. I mean, it's not a slasher game or a mascot horror game. There's no stealth, no hiding from the enemy. The game relies heavily on its story, and that's what I love about it. It's obvious the developer put a lot of thought into this and really fleshed out the narrative. I mean, it's like a 30-minute game, probably the longest he's made, and it's definitely one of his standout offerings. So yeah, check it out when you get a chance. Next comes Hollow Midnight. This was released in late October of 2023, and it's kind of a campy Halloween adventure where we play as Luca, and we're trying to impress a girl in our class at school. Our plan is to steal candy from Mr. Grinner, who apparently is the local creepy guy who lives in an isolated house in the neighborhood. On Halloween night, we climb through a hole in the cement wall surrounding his house. The yard is littered with pumpkins, and we can explore a little bit. It's a very dark-looking game, but we have a flashlight to help us see. We find the porch and the candy laid out in a jack-o'-lantern. After taking the candy, it's mission accomplished, right? Well, not exactly, because we find our exit, the hole in the wall, has somehow magically vanished. We're trapped. Or are we? The game has two endings, and there are a few items to find that can aid our escape. There's a family plot of gravestones in the backyard that'll give you the heebie-jeebies. There's also a gate that, if we can open it, will allow us to flee and put this little misadventure behind us. But another option exists, and that's simply break into the house itself and see what's inside. The strength of the game lies in its suspense. The whole time you're wandering around, exploring the area, you're wondering, where is the property owner? Where is Mr. Grinner, and is it possible to escape without any kind of scary encounter? You'll have to play it yourself to get those answers. I think this is Niven Hedinger's first Halloween-themed game. and it's a pretty chill one to play on a dark night to get you in the mood for tricking and treating. I enjoyed its atmosphere and theme, but I do have some constructive criticism on how it could have been improved. Maybe if it were a little longer, maybe if there was more to do, more descriptions when you clicked on interesting looking objects. There were several times that I saw something that seemed to stand out, but when I clicked on it, nothing happened. That was disappointing and seems like a missed opportunity to add more color and history to the narrative. Like say with the gravestones, for instance. But anyway, I understand that this was made in less than a week, so there was probably some time crunch happening. But yeah, I'd say Hollow Midnight is a spooky little Halloween game that succeeds in creating a suspenseful tone, with a couple of jump scares thrown in for good measure. Try it out next Halloween. I'm sure you'll appreciate what the developer came up with here. Alright, next we have Incoherence, which was released in November of 2023, and this is a vastly different game from Crimson Hunt, and especially Hollow Midnight. The tone here is darker, with a much more mature subject matter. I would definitely classify this as psychological horror. The story is simple, but the underlying theme is complex. We play as Kate, a troubled young woman who is coping with the recent death of her sister. She is overcome with a sense of guilt. It seems her sister had been wrestling with addiction issues for most of her adult life, and Kate feels that maybe she hadn't done enough to comfort and care for her mentally unstable sibling. And mental instability is at the core of this story. Kate herself suffers from hallucinations, hearing voices, seeing grisly images that can't possibly exist. Or perhaps they do. At the start of the game, we wake up in a hotel room. We get dressed and we can explore a little bit, but then our phone rings. Our doctor, a psychiatrist, is meeting us in another room down the hall as sort of a house call. We have a short session with her and agree to continue taking our medication, but once we get back to our room, the anxiety and unease returns. More hallucinations occur, and at this point, the line between imagination and reality begins to blur. We, as the player, are helpless to stop what ends up happening. I won't spoil it for you, but I will say the circumstances and events eventually lead to a shocking conclusion, one that will leave you staring at the screen as the credits roll. I found this game to be an exceptional piece of storytelling that explains just enough to give you an idea as to what's going on, but the developer is smart enough here to not show you everything, you know? He leaves some mysteries intact, like who are the people Kate encounters in the hallways? What are their stories? What's the story with the doctor? And what's inside the briefcase in our room? Incoherence is a game that also proves that Niven Hedinger is capable of navigating thematically from one end of the spectrum to the other. He can make a fun, goofy, whimsical game one month, and then weeks later produce a dark, introspective, brooding slice of horror. It says a lot that he doesn't paint himself into a corner with just one style or a singular type of narrative. Could this game have been improved? That's tough to say, because I guess one could argue the story can be obtuse at times, but again, I like that so much of it is open to interpretation. It gives the plot plenty of room to breathe. So yeah, I'm not sure I would change anything about it, really. Let's move on to the last game I wanted to cover. It's called Final Contract, and it was released in December of 2023. We play as a nameless hitman hired to assassinate a Dr. Miller and steal his research notes. The game is loosely tied to the Christmas season in that it takes place in a wintry environment filled with snow. Apparently in the story, Christmas is just days away, and this is our final contract before the end of the year. Our character arrives near a wooded area, and as we advance, we can see a cabin that we can assume is occupied by our quarry. We carry a gun like most assassins would, so yeah, at first glance, it almost looks like a first-person shooter. I can't say anything else really without giving away important plot points. Let's just say our hitman gets more than he bargained for. Honestly, I must admit, after playing this one, it seems a little undercooked. It's super short, like 5 minutes long, and I don't know, it's probably going to be relegated to Niven Hedinger's more slight efforts, I think. It has one ending. You'll find the gun is rather pointless, and the tiny little plot is over before you can even really get into the atmosphere of the game. but it looks like this was made in 3 days, so a lot can probably be chalked up to time constraints. He says he wanted to get something out just in time for Christmas, which I understand. And it's not a terrible game by any stretch. I just think its failings only highlight the more high-caliber offerings from the previous 3 games I mentioned, especially Crimson Hunt and the sublime Incoherence. Now, currently, we are awaiting Niven's next project called Gimmick. It should arrive soon. He promises it's another larger game, and I can't wait to see what he's come up with now. But yeah, there you have it, my reviews of the 4 most recent efforts by Niven Hedinger and Apish Box Games. I highly recommend you check his stuff out. He's a pretty busy guy. In addition to developing small horror games, he also has a YouTube channel where he posts videos at a pretty regular rate. I'll leave a link in the description below. Thank you so much for your time. Thanks for watching. I hope you enjoyed the video. Stay safe out there, and I'll see you next time.